speak, Lord. And as you are healing us, may we find now the power of your Spirit to heal one another. This is our prayer. And if everyone wants a word, and everyone needs a word, and who believes now they will hear a word, let's all say, Amen. Following forgiveness in this same tenor of healing, it's a beautiful thing to know that we can be healed by Jesus. But all that Jesus is, when he left, he calls us to be for him. So as the forgiven, we have been given the gift now to become forgivers. Now what we want to be very careful to do from the very beginning is not to say, you need to go forgive. We know that. Most of us do. Most of us are aware of the reality of forgiveness, but the process, the how, the why, what's the ingredients? I know how something tastes, but to make it is altogether different. So we know our forgiveness and what it tastes like, but how do we make it? That's what we want to focus on in our study today. So let's start with our focus verse here in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1. Let's read together, if you will.
Be ye therefore followers of God, as dear children, and walk in love, as Christ also hath loved us, and hath given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God, for a sweet-smelling Savior.
Amen. A sweet-smelling Savior, because of a sweet-smelling Savior. In other words, you know how we always say God is good, and what? All the time. God is good. As good as God is to you, that's how good you can be to others. Otherwise, the Lord is pouring himself into a cup instead of a pipeline. So we talk about pipelines and blessings. Unfortunately, we limit it to money and finances. But the grace of God is not designed for a sinner. It's designed for sinners. That's why there's not a soloist in heaven. There's a choir in heaven. So what God has done through Jesus Christ is he's creating a choir of grace so that what you have heard, the song he has sung to you, he has sung it to you not just for your sake, so that you can then sing that song to others. So as we become singers of the grace, or forgivers having been forgiven, it creates a choir of grace. So you don't have to worry if you can't sing. Don't worry about if you can't sing. Don't worry about if you can't cut that CD. Because that's not the real song that Jesus died for you to sing. He said, be ye followers. Be ye what? Followers. Follow how? As he has forgiven, now he wants to forgive us so that we can forgive others. Now let's get into the ingredient list, because what we're going to do now is just take a look real quick at some history. Because the good news is now Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun. So that means that there's nothing that you're going through that someone else has not gone through. But watch this. The Bible is so powerful because there's no one who's not only not going through what you're going through, but there's nothing that you cannot go through that someone else has gone through. You're not, the game you're playing has already been won by someone else. And I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about another brother or another sister. Here they are here in the book of 1 Samuel. Now in 1 Samuel, just real quick to get some background, we start with Saul being called. Israel was originally ordained to be led by God, a theocracy. But they didn't want God. They wanted a king. So when they asked for a king, God heard their prayer. Aren't you amazed that God will even answer the prayers that should be asked? Just so that we will find out that I shouldn't have asked for that. This is what happens here in 1 Samuel 9. Quickly, the Lord says, I got a man, and that's who they want. And in verse 17 of 1 Samuel 9, Samuel saw Saul, and the Lord said unto him, Behold, the man whom I spake to thee of, this same shall reign over my people. So the Lord called Saul. Who did he call? Saul. That's in chapter 9. But it only takes 6 chapters for Saul to forget who called him. Because by the time we get to chapter 15, you see Saul's fall. In fact, there in verse 23 of 1 Samuel 15, it says, for rebellion is as the sin of what? Witchcraft. And stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he also hath rejected thee from being king. Who rejects who first? Saul rejects God. And because he's rejected God, he loses his calling. But there's still someone who needs a leader, Israel. There's still people who need someone to look to and to follow. So in the next chapter, after Saul's fall, you see David's call. Isn't it good to know that God always has somebody in the wing? God always has a wingman. So that even if someone doesn't decide to do what they ought to do, God will let you step in. See, even if you're in a relationship and it's supposed to be one person sharing and the other person sharing, even when that person is slacking, God will give you the spirit that they rejected and empower you to do two jobs in one. I'm talking to a single parent. I'm talking to a household where someone's not carrying their weight. I'm talking to someone who's trying to do what's right, working with someone who has no interest in right. God called David from the sheepfold. And if you look there in verse 7, he says, the Lord said unto Samuel in 1 Samuel 16, look not on his countenance. That means don't look at his face. The wingman or the wingwoman isn't always pretty. You may not look the part, but how you look has nothing to do with how you live. Because he said, don't look at how he looks. Don't look at how tall he is. David was a little boy. Why was that important? Because Saul, whether you know it or not, was a giant. The Bible says there in verse 9, he was head and shoulders above the tallest men in Israel. In fact, if you go back to David and Goliath, God raised up Saul. You say, why would he call Saul? No, he was going to act the fool. He knew that Goliath was coming, the champion of Gath. And he knew that they would need a giant to fight. That chapter is supposed to be Saul's chapter. A giant fighting a giant. But instead, the grace of God uses a boy to kill a giant. Don't look at how tall it is. Some of y'all need to get out of the mirror. Don't look at yourself. Stop looking at yourself. That's the main reason why most people aren't forgiving now. But we're going to go there in a little bit. Because it says, the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance. But what? The Lord looketh on the heart. Somebody need to say amen. Because what that means is, even if you ain't living right, even if there's stuff in your life that's not right, God is not judging you by what you're doing. So that's wait, what are you saying? Listen, the reason why God doesn't just judge us by what we're doing is because the Lord even understands why we're doing it. That's why I can't judge what you're doing and what you can't judge what I'm doing. You just see the sin. You just see the habit. You just see the addiction or the lifestyle. And you say, God, how can you love him? Well, it's the same way I loved you. And the reason why I can is because I know why you're doing what you're doing. God doesn't look at that. He looks at the heart. And he not only looks at why we're doing it, but he sees us as we shall be, because he says, the Lord said, arise and anoint him, for this is he. So now, we are introduced to two characters. We have Saul on the one hand, and we have David on the other. And so now in 1 Samuel 18, we know our two characters. And we're going to see them in a struggle, literally, between Saul's bitterness and David's forgiveness. So now that we know where they come from, let's turn the page now and focus in on Saul and his situation, Saul and his bitterness.
One thing, this whole message that God put upon our hearts to share is birthed from an experience. Experience with the story and a personal experience of what God wants to show us before he can give us what he wants to give us. And so, the first thing we have to recognize is the fact that Before we can even talk about forgiveness, I'm the queen of visual aids. I'm sorry, I gotta have some visual to show you. Before we can talk about forgiveness, we all have to recognize a root that grows in our hearts that keeps us from forgiving. Let's talk about Saul. So Saul, in himself, when he fell, when Samuel came to him and said, this is what God has asked you to do, you did not do it. You now have been rejected. What Saul began to do at that very moment was avoid the messenger.
That's right.
He immediately started to avoid Samuel. And with that avoidance, bitterness started to take root in his heart.
That's right.
And that bitterness, when it takes root in the heart, it doesn't stay as it is.
That's right.
When something takes root, it grows. And when it grows, it can grow from a bush to a tree to a forest.
That's right.
And with Saul's case, he saw it take full bloom in his life. You see, when we have bitterness in our lives, it's like squeezing a lemon into a glass. You know, a lemon is very bitter.
Amen.
Very bitter. Don't add the zest to it. Very bitter. And so what Saul did was, as he decided to allow the bitterness to settle in his heart, he walked away from the grace of God. I need for you that as I describe Saul's bitterness, to look inside. Look inside your relationship with God and with others. Because one thing about bitterness is that you know it's present in your life when you want to avoid the very person or thing that has created it. Think about somebody, think about some situation, think about some relationship where if you had your way, that person, that relationship, that situation would fall off the face of the earth and you would be happy.
All right.
Then think about how, when you start reminiscing of this situation, this relationship, think about how often it takes your thoughts. Think about how often you talk about it. You see, Saul, what happened with him, once Samuel told him, you did not obey God, Samuel started to let the seed of jealousy grow in his heart because God now had anointed David. And so David would go out to battle and the women would start to sing in the street saying, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. And the women would sing and dance in the streets, and Saul would take note of that. And it was no longer a root anymore. It was a bitterness against God. It was a bitterness against Samuel. Now there's a bitterness against David. I'm going to go after the one that I know I can touch. I'm going to go after the one that I know I can eliminate, that's going to remind me of the bitterness that I have allowed to grow in my heart. A lemon is very bitter. And we can sit with bitterness in our hearts, just like God told Samuel, don't look on the outward appearance. You know, bitterness can be settling in our hearts, and we look just as fine on the outside. But we're just so bitter on the inside. And it shows up from time to time in our conversations, in our facial expressions, in our posture, in our relations with other people. Bitterness is terrible. So let's look at this story a little closer.
When you look at the story of Saul, and how that seed of bitterness now acts on David. It's a powerful tale of two cities, as we like to say. You know, the first line of that book says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This is in 1 Samuel 18. Because the interplay between these two men is that David, who is called by God, and please note, and I didn't point this out, I forgot to point this out. When Samuel went to anoint David, David did not know, Jesse didn't know, his brothers didn't know to what work he was being anointed. What that means is David didn't know he was to be king. He simply knew he was anointed. And that's why if you read on in that chapter, a few verses on, that's when Saul calls him to say, yeah, I need a musician to come and play. He has him come and play because he doesn't see him as any threat. And David himself doesn't know that he's king. But as Tara was mentioning, as David's sun, if you will, was rising and Saul's clouds were descending, it raised up a spirit in him that is bitter and resenting not just David, but the God that he serves. So even bitterness that comes to our lives or in our lives because of the things that others have done to us, we can own that bitterness just as if we did it to someone else. I'm going to say it again because this is really important. It may not be flashy, but it's powerful. The bitterness that you harbor from what someone has done to you is no different than the bitterness that you show when you hurt someone else. I'll use this example. We have a tragedy that happened here in the city where a young man took the lives of 3 family members. That took some incredible bitterness to do that. We grieve that and we mourn that today. But watch this. That was bitterness. If we cannot find the power of the Spirit and the grace of God to forgive someone for the wrong that they have done, that same bitterness becomes our bitterness. This is why we're going here today. Because that's when a tragedy becomes a tragic tragedy. Not just wrong that is done, but then when we don't find the grace to forgive the wrong that was done. The devil wins twice. So as we look at this story, we're going to look at Saul's bitterness, but David's forgiveness. So now, let's get to it. There are 5. If you want to turn in your Bibles, you can do that too. But in 1 Samuel 18, there's 5 instances of these two in reaction. So Tara's going to talk about the bitterness. I'm going to take a look at the forgiveness.
I also want to add this to the story. When God came to Samuel and said, stop mourning over stop mourning over Saul. He's rejected. I need for you to go and anoint someone who will be king over my people. Samuel spoke up and said, Lord, if I go to anoint someone as king, Saul will have his head. So that bitterness was already prevalent among Samuel and within Saul's heart. But see, nobody knew what God was doing. But whatever God is doing, it will start to become more and more prevalent as God moves. You don't have to try and tell people what God is doing. God will show himself faithful as he allows his plan to take existence. So let's look a little bit at Saul's bitterness. Verse 10 says, and it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul. I read this verse to the class, and they said, wait a minute, Mrs. Bailey. How in the world can God send an evil spirit upon someone? Let me make this very plain and clear as I did to 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. When you walk away from God, see, life is a vacuum. When you remove something, something else will fit in. When you walk away from God, evil will fill in. So what happened was when God rejected him, his spirit was removed from Saul. And immediately evil came in. So this is what it is saying in God's word, where he prophesied in the midst of the house, and David played with his hand as at other times. And there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin. For he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. Man, I will pin you to the wall with this javelin. And David, just in time, got out of the way, and his life was saved. I know it was his angel. I know it was the Spirit of God that had come upon David for him to move at the right time to get out of the way of the man who wanted to get rid of the source of his bitterness. Let me tell you what bitterness can do. Bitterness can have you take your own hand and try to eliminate the one that is creating the bitterness. We look good in the mirror. We look good on the outside. But when we fall away from God's grace, there is no telling what can come of us. This is Saul's bitterness.
We turn off the light to explain verse 10 in another way, where it says that the spirit, an evil spirit from God came. Look at it like light and darkness. When Saul turned his heart from God, he went away from the light. There's no such thing as darkness, just like there's no such thing as cold. All cold is the absence of heat. All darkness is the absence of light. So if you turn off the light, or if you take away the light, what do you bring? You bring darkness. So that's why when you read in verse 12, what does it say about Saul? Saul was afraid of David. It's not that he was afraid of David. Saul was afraid of the dark.
Yes.
He was in the dark. And he could see David was in the light. Just like the Egyptians could look in Goshen and see there was light in Goshen, but when that plague of darkness fell, there was darkness in Egypt. It was a darkness so dark, the spirit of prophecy says it's a darkness that could be felt. A physical darkness. But in the light of God, look at what David was able to do. When someone has thrown a javelin at you, and they threw it and it stuck in the wall, Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him. And what was able to do there in verse 14? David behaved himself wisely in all his ways. And the Lord was with him. So you mean to tell me somebody can throw a javelin at you and you dodge the javelin? Not only did he throw the javelin, what was David doing when he threw the javelin at him?
Playing.
He was playing. Why was he there playing? Who was he playing for?
Saul.
So you mean to tell me when I'm here to help someone, I'm here to minister to someone, I'm here to love on someone, and their response to my love is a javelin? I've been faithful for 15 years and you throw a javelin? I've done this, that, and the other without pay, but you throw a javelin? The Bible says by the grace of God you can walk wisely. In all your ways, because you're walking with God. So with Jesus' grace, they can throw a spear, they can throw a javelin, they can shoot you, but you'll dodge every one because you're walking what? Wisely with God. That's grace.
For by grace we are saved through faith. We're not going to understand this grace of God. That's why it's not of ourselves, but it's a gift of God. So when God is in us and God is with us, we cannot explain our reactions to even something as horrible as this. Here's another situation. And Saul said to David, "Behold, my elder daughter Mary. Her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me and fight the Lord's battle." We know what's in Saul's heart. It's not gift giving. For Saul said, "Let not mine hand be upon him," meaning I tried to kill him. So I'm not going to go against God. So let me go another way. Let me go another way. Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. But it came to pass at the time when Mary, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto someone else to be a wife.
That's cold-blooded. Now we're getting from first-degree murder to conspiracy. And he puts up this conspiracy. But while all of this is going on, what's in David's mind? What's in his head? He says, David says to Saul, "Who am I? And what is my life or my father's family in Israel that I should be son-in-law to the king?" David is just blown away saying, I'm a shepherd boy, and I'm about to become the son-in-law to the king. He doesn't even know that this gift is a conspiracy against him. See, some of us think we got to know what our enemy is doing. Some people have built ministries all of exposing conspiracies. Some people stay up late at night trying to figure out what's the government going to do to try and get us when we keep the Sabbath. Some of us are scared about what people say they're going to do to us at work, so we try to be extra nice to the boss so they kind of swing around and do us in. Or we do all kinds of foolishness like that. All David saw was blessing because that was all that was in his heart. He said, wow, I'm about to be the son-in-law to the king, and I was a single bachelor boy shepherd not long ago. You don't have to know what they're doing. When people call you and say, do you know? Say, no, I don't know, and I don't need to know. That's like one sign. Once they pick up, and the first word is, girl, do you know? Your first phrase. No, I don't know, and I don't want to know. And if you can't have a conversation after that, then you know you got a friend or an associate. Because if we can only vibe off of negativity, that's not friendship. That's not fruitful. In fact, you're feeding my cortisol levels. That's my stress hormones. You're graying me. You're wrinkling me. I don't need this. And if I see someone do something good, I don't even question why they do it. I simply say, I'm on it. And even if it's a conspiracy, I'm thankful because you can't catch me when I'm with Jesus.
One thing that's about David is that David was committed to the king. David knew that Saul was God's anointed. And when David saw Saul, he saw a connection to God. He saw God's anointed in front of him. So anything the king was willing to give to him or to honor him with, he saw it as a privilege and an honor. He was very, very short to think anything otherwise because he knew that his service in the kingdom was to God. Because he was serving God's servant. He was serving God's king. And so when our focus is right, when our focus is where it should be, then that bitterness cannot grow. Because we know who we work for. We know who we serve. We know why we do what we do. And if we do what we do for God, we don't have to worry about having what Saul had in his heart. So the next situation was Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David.
His other daughter.
And they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. But here we go. And Saul said, hey, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. This sounds a little bit like Samson's situation, but this Philistine group was interesting. Yes. Wherefore Saul said to David, thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the twain. Meaning, again, I'll let you be, I'm offering you an opportunity to be my son-in-law again. But in his heart, he knew, I want the destruction of this man. I no longer want him in existence. This is my goal. This is what bitterness wants to create when it's allowed to settle and grow and flourish in our hearts.
Now, what's key to point out here is what spirit is Saul now under the control of?
Evil.
Remember from the very beginning it says, and the Spirit of the Lord left him. So who really is against David? Satan. So you notice and you see that there's a force that's at work here because it's the same situation happening again. But even though the same situation is happening and it's escalated, how is it escalated? Because this daughter David actually loved. And Saul's intent was to snare. See, when the devil sets a trap, and if the trap doesn't work, he'll put a little sugar on it. He'll sweeten the temptation. He's not very creative. Remember, he's no creative at all. He's actually a copycat. And so as a copycat, he can only take what God has made and twist it. So if he doesn't work with plain, he'll put a little sugar on it. But James says to us, count it all joy
Yes.
when you fall into diverse temptations. What that means is, even when the devil escalates the temptation, the Lord will escalate his grace.
Amen.
So even though he's got a second trap, the Bible says in verse 23, Saul's servants spake those words in the ears of David. Because they're like, man, you sure you want to go this? And what does David say? Seemeth it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law? Seeing that I am a poor man, and lightly, you see how David sees himself. The humility. I know who I am. I ain't nothing. So to get this blessing, I'll take it. I thank him. David's consistency. You don't have to be old to be consistent. I'm not devaluing the worthiness of age, but especially young adults and young children. You don't have to be old to be consistent. In other words, there is value and praise in doing or being faithful for a long time.
Yes.
But being faithful for 20 years is no more valuable than being faithful for 20 minutes. And see, some of us have been clean from stuff. We've stopped stuff, and we're like in our days phase or in our months phase. And we're afraid, well, I get to 20 years, and I can do it. Don't think like that. Because just like bitterness is bitterness, faithfulness is faithfulness. There's a thief on the cross to remind us of this. Doesn't matter how long you go to church, it's, are you in Christ? Doesn't matter how long you've been preaching, it's, do you believe in Jesus? And so David shows consistency of an old man at a very young age. He responds to a trap or a snare, again, with thanks from the Lord.
I'm amazed by this example because a lot of times, I know myself, I don't approach situations where someone is trying to wrong me with this kind of
Joy.
meekness, with this kind of blindness to what's going on. You can't help but to take the information that you have and walk softly and slowly around the person that you know has it in for you. But God is saying through David, learn it. I'm willing to teach you. I'm willing to put this in you if you just let me. Let me show you through the life of David that it's possible that when you stay within my grace, it doesn't matter if somebody has a javelin in their hand. I got you. I got you. You're in my care. You're with me. And I think that we have to think more about the fact that with God and in God is so valuable to our survival in this world, to our survival as a Christian. So, we have another bitterness situation. And Saul said, thus shall ye say to David, the king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. He's trying to get to his pride now. He's like, they sing songs about you, right? So you just get on out there and you just pay me this kind of dowry and you're good. He's basically trying to put him out there so that he cannot survive.
Now this is important to break down because this is not something we do in our culture anymore. But the idea of a dowry is what a groom or the man would give to the bride or her family. And if you were a person of wealth, you would give money or property or something like that, cattle. But remember, what did David just say in the verse before? He said, I'm a poor man. So he had no dowry to give. So Saul's like, I got him. And his dowry to pay for the woman that he loved was going to be the foreskins of 100 Philistines. The foreskin is the outer skin portion of the male genitalia. That does not come off voluntarily. What that meant is that David would have to not only kill these men, but then when they were dead, he would have to cut off the foreskin of 100 brothers. Do we love our wives enough? Do you love your fiancé enough? Would you do that? David did. Was that a clean job?
No.
If I told you to go prepare 100 heads of collard greens, cut them, rinse them, that's a task. If I told you to get 100 foreskins, See, sometimes when you're walking in grace, your enemy will ask you to do something that is intentionally inconvenient.
Yes. That's right.
It's a dirty job. It's a low-down job that no one wants. But there was something deeper than the job that moved David to go do it, and it was his love for that woman.
That's right.
If you love Jesus, there is no foreskin you won't cut. When we love Jesus, the Bible says David arose and went with his sword. He arose and went, he and his men. See, he couldn't do it alone. That's why we have a church. We can't forgive as we would alone as we can if we forgive together. But we belong to a community. David goes out and they slew up the Philistines. 2! Woo! Did you catch that math? Saul said, I'm going to give me 100. What God will do is, what the devil meant for evil, how will God make it for good? They thought it was a demotion. But they'll demote you. You'll work that job and be so faithful that the boss of your boss will then jump over them and say, you come on up here. He will bypass the superior. I'm telling you, that's happening right now. He will have your superior see your dirty work and say, come on up here. And then you become your boss's boss. Now, that's not for everybody, because not everybody works, everyone has that kind of. This happens to all of us spiritually. That means the Lord can make you the master of your enemy. That's why Paul, y'all read the Sabbath school lesson? Paul was able to go, and the demons would say, Jesus we know, and Paul we know. What that means is the same master that Paul used to serve, because Paul was killing Christians. Now God is using Paul to raise up people from the dead. He became his former boss's boss. Look at what David bought their foreskins. 200. That's nasty. 200. And they gave it in full tale to the king. And that he might be what? The king's son-in-law. And you don't hear Saul saying nothing. What does the next part say? And Saul gave him the shot. He will shut your enemy up. Some of y'all can't go to sleep at night because the devil's in your head. But with Jesus, he will shut him up. And make your past what it is, a memory. Saul saw, how do we see? With our eyes. God's not just going to bless you on the inside. Sometimes we talk about blessings and we're always going, no. This was an inside blessing. Because Saul had to sit there at the wedding. What's the wedding song? It's been 18 years. I had to remember. He had to sit there, tap his feet, smile. Then they had to do the picture. They had to do the picture with the family. Okay, smile, Dad. He's up there smiling. God will bless you in victory that others will see it. All right. And what they don't see, they'll know. Saul saw and knew, read with me, that the Lord was with David and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. People may not like you. But Jesus said they will know that we are Christians by our love. And even if people don't like you or don't want your love, they have to respect your love. Though you slay me, yet will I trust him. Though you meant to cause a snare to me, get in this wedding photo. Because what the enemy means for evil, this is real life, it's real life. What the enemy meant for evil. Do you understand that's what every temptation is? I'm about to go to the next door. Every temptation is a 50-50 victory. It's a game. The temptation, you can see it as, oh God, he's trying to make me fall. He's trying to make me fall. But you got just as it's a 50-50 proposition. When you're tempted to do wrong, there's 50% that says you can do right. All right. David chose the first 50, Saul chose the other 50. That's all we see here, folks. This is the last one.
And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. He never gave up. If the root is there, this is one thing I failed to mention at the beginning when I was talking about bitterness. When bitterness is there, the danger of keeping bitterness and allowing it to grow is that it can damage your soul. It can damage your soul. I don't want anything to damage my soul. I want the salvation of the Lord in full bloom. When He comes, I want to see His face. And I want to inherit the kingdom that He is preparing for me and all those who believe in Him. Saul became David's enemy continually.
That means there's a lot of other dirty stuff that Saul did to David. But it's not a Bible to cover it. But if you read verse 30, it says, Then the princes of the Philistines went forth. And it came to pass after they went forth that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. Wise is powerful. Because most of us are ready to forgive people once they said they're sorry. Most of us are ready to forgive once the other person has come to repentance. But verse 29 says that Saul became David's enemy continually. But verse 30 says that David behaved himself more wisely. So what that tells us is, I don't forgive you because you stop. I forgive you because God said so. It's one thing to say you stop, but then you haven't even recognized it. But verse 29 says he's constantly doing it, constantly messing over him, constantly trying to kill him. And David never leaves the palace. How can he stay there and not lose his mind? He was constantly forgiving his foolishness. How can we get there? This is what we go to. This is what we go to now.
Yes.
We can only get there through our acceptance of forgiveness.
As we bring this home, this is where we really have to take a big swallow and say, okay, Lord, where do we go from here? Because the story continues past chapter 18 to the point to where David could not reside in the palace anymore because Saul was about to take his life. And so David is now on the run. He is a fugitive of the king. And Saul is after David, so much so, he takes 3,000 men with him to get David. See, David only had about 600 men with him on his side. It was not fair. But see, this is the thing. As David was on the run, God was with David. And David was with God. And for some reason, everywhere David went, there was someone whispering in the wind saying, David is over there, and Saul would be over there. And then David is over there, and Saul would be there. Somebody was keeping this mess going. Somebody. They're just like a sneaky little snake, just in the crevices, in the corner, keeping bitterness stirred up so that what bitterness is setting out to do can be done. We have to make sure we're not like that. We have to make sure that we're not the ones sneaking in the corners, keeping bitterness stirred up. But when God is trying to uproot bitterness, we need to be a part of that gardening process. We need to be a part of God being able to take out every bit of root in every heart so that what he did through David, through us. And so, the run ends in a cave. David and his 600 men decided to go into a cave and hide and wait. And they're in the darkness in this cave, and they're just waiting because they know Saul is surrounding them. But for some reason, see, even when you're God's enemy, he can still lead you. For some reason, Saul comes in away from the crew, and he's just like, I'm just going to take me a break. And he just rests in the cave. He takes a breather and falls asleep right in the cave where David and his 600 men are waiting in the dark shadows. And David's men say to him, boss, we got him. God has delivered the enemy into your hand. We got him. This is over. You got your enemy right where God said he will put him. Take it. Take his life. End this stuff. And David said, I dare not put my hand against God's anointed. That is not my job. I am not God. You see, when we've been hurt so much and that bitterness is in our hearts, we want so much for that to end. And we want so much to say, I'm tired of this. But we want to then step into God's territory. And we want to try and do what only God can do. And David put his men in their places. And he said, no. We will not touch him. But no, his men were persistent. No, we are going to take him right now. And David said, no. And then something in his heart said, just take a piece of his skirt. See, David was like a ninja. He went in there, took his knife, cut a little bit of Saul's skirt off, put it in his little pouch, and went back into the darkness. Saul wakes up out of his slumber. Okay, I guess I'll join my crew again. Joins his crew, and he hears a voice, a familiar voice that he has not heard in a very long time. A voice that he wanted to annihilate and eliminate from the world now calls out his name.
That's right.
David is outside of the cave at this point, and these are the words that he says to the man who's trying to kill him. The Lord judge between me and thee.
That's right.
David had humbled himself to the point that he said, this is out of my hands. That's why he repented of cutting off his garment, because that was whose words? That was David's words. And he realized the battle is not mine, but the Lord's.
Right.
He said, the Lord judge between me and thee, Saul. In other words, God's going to take care of this.
That's right.
See, what you're doing, God's going to take care of it.
That's right.
I will trust him. The Lord will avenge me of thee.
Yeah.
After all this drama, David says, Saul, you aren't my enemy. You're not my problem. You aren't my focus. God will take care of you. The person, the soul that I need to make sure is right with God is me. See, if you're spending 20 minutes praying for your enemy, that means you need to at least spend 21 minutes praying for yourself. If you spend 2 days, 3 days fasting for your husband, fasting for your coworker, fasting for your parent, then you need to spend 4 for you. Because God will take care of him. The issue is me. And David stands up and says, the Lord will take care of you, but my hand shall not be upon you. See, I didn't understand. How did he say that? Because it was somebody more important in his mind than Saul. And it was his own soul.
That's right.
I gotta be saved. I can't deal with when I'm gonna get persecuted. I gotta make sure, am I humble enough, have the grace enough to say, I'm gonna pray for them. I'm gonna love them. I'm gonna gift them. Not pray for them. I'm gonna make something for them and give it to them. You ever make a pie for your enemy? Somebody called it enemy pie. We need to start making some enemy pies. Jesus said in the Beatitudes, when he preached that first sermon, thousands listened, he said, bless them that curse.
That's right.
Jesus never preached a birthday gift. Now, one time did Jesus say, give a gift to someone when they turn 20. Give a gift to someone when they turn. But Jesus said, give a gift to someone that curses you.
That's right.
Jesus commanded us. Do you know what a commandment is? We quote one every Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath to keep it. And we'll swear up and down we're supposed to be here on Saturday. There's another commandment he gave. Bless those that curse you. That doesn't mean don't give birthday gifts. Doesn't mean don't give anniversary gifts. But make sure in your giving you give. You want to know what gift? You want to know what gift David gave to Saul? His life. His life. I could have killed, I could have staked up. They wouldn't even heard you scream. What gift did you give to someone? And you gave it to the man who was trying to take your life. I'm going to give you your life while you're trying to take mine. It came to pass when David stopped preaching, when he stopped speaking, Saul said, is this thy voice? My son David? He's a son now. Because who's speaking? It's not David. He's hearing the voice of God. Lord, remember, in the very beginning, he went to the dark. He hadn't heard the Holy Spirit speak in a long time. And when David got done speaking, is that voice? That voice that came to me in the battle of the sword. We promised. It's that voice again. He says, he wept. He cried. He wept loud. And he said to David, you are more righteous than I. See, if David spent all his time trying to say, I'm right. You don't have to waste your time trying to prove you're right. If you just do what's right and live what's right, God will have your persecutor say, you're right and I am wrong. You should never argue for yourself. That's the last, when you've been wrong, that's not what the world says. Sue him. The world says curse him out. The world says you need to put your foot down. No. The first thing that needs to go down is your knees. Because the only thing that's going to keep you from killing someone who's trying to kill you, it ain't you. It ain't your Adventism. It ain't your family. It is the Spirit of the living God. Don't think, that's why we say don't leave here out and say, okay, I'm going to try and forgive. If you go out here and leave and say, I'm going to go forgive, I guarantee you, you're going to fail.
That's right.
Because you left here saying, I'm going to go for you can't do this.
That's right.
To get your enemy to the point, to get Satan to the point to say, you are more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me. You've given me good when all I've given you is bad. You've rewarded me. What does he mean by rewarded me? What that means is it was unmerited. What is unmerited favor? Grace. You gave me something I didn't deserve.
That's right.
You can't love people because they deserve it.
That's right.
So many beds are cold. So many homes are just torn up because we're waiting people to love us first.
That's right.
Or we're waiting for people to love us back.
That's right. That's right.
This is why God gave us children.
That's right.
You made a decision at the altar when you said I do. That was a choice.
Yeah.
But the children that come into our lives, they don't have a say in the matter. And you don't get to pick which ones you get. You don't get the choice. And just like you and children, we don't get the choice to what house we come into. There's a reason why God didn't just give us marriage, but He gave us parenthood. Because in parenthood, it helps us to understand unconditional love. See, there was a day when y'all said, I'm going to get married on this day, we're going to get married in this place. But when a child is born, how much control do you have over the birthday? Naturally. None. They come because they come. And when they arrive, you do not, the baby doesn't come out, when, you don't look at the baby and say, oh, I'm so proud of you, my little attorney. Oh, I'm so grateful you're a multi-million-dollar athlete. Oh, I'm so proud. Oh, you're that nurse that we always wanted in the family. When the baby comes out and the mother is presented with the child, what does a good mother do? Smile. Hold. Care. That's unmerited favor. That is favor on the basis of a reality. You're my son. You're my daughter. And we have to stop looking at people through their merit and focus on favor. You know the same favor you want? The same favor you're out there preaching in that half gospel, that favor gospel? Just looking, claiming it. Okay. But what if we started blessing just like that? We just hook people up because they needed it. So I'm going to be faithful to him even though he's unfaithful to me because I'm faithful to God. I'm going to do this for her. I'm going to make this for her even though she just yelled at me, even though she just got on me for something I didn't do. That's when we go out to dinner. When we start giving gifts like this, we won't need Christmas. People get up and argue about Christmas. It's Christmas for Christmas. Here's my argument. I don't celebrate, my family, we don't celebrate Christmas because we don't need it. We're always giving gifts. Especially when one of us is messed up. I'm going to just stop here.
You just let the Spirit keep on speaking.
Because verse 19 says, for if a man find his enemy, will he let him go well away? This is Saul talking. He's now saying, this is forgiveness. Will a man do that? No. Who will? Only God. Wherefore the Lord reward thee good for that thou hast done unto me this day. And now behold.
This is Saul speaking.
This is Saul speaking. Samuel never declared him king. Who is the first man to declare David king? And now behold, I know well that thou shalt surely be king. And the kingdom of Israel shall be established in the same hand that drops the knife. In dropping the knife, it picks up a kingdom. All right. When you drop your knife, if you drop your knife, you will pick up a kingdom. That ain't up.
I mean, what can you say after that? But that can only happen. Dropping the knife to pick up a kingdom can only happen as you are wise. And wisdom doesn't come from us. Wisdom comes from God. God gives it as a gift. He said, let any man who lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who will give it to them and upbraideth not, and will give it liberally if you ask. You see, sometimes we hear things like that and we get motivated and we go and we just, I'm going to give gifts, and once again we give it in our own strength and boom, boom, we get hit upside the head again. Or we get slapped around the house again. But see, God gives us wisdom. Along with that courage, along with that grace from God, He will give us wisdom on what to do. He will say in your ear, don't do that, do this. Don't go there, go here. Don't talk to her, talk to her. Don't talk to him, talk to him. When God is leading, He will lead you with wisdom. And He will fill you with wisdom so that when you drop that knife, it is not out of naivety. You will not be naive. You will walk in the grace of God. And with that grace comes power and strength and confidence to do what God put you in that position to do. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. I'm going to end this with a personal experience because what we are sharing with you today is real. When we got here to Jackson, Mississippi, I was so excited to be able to come back and serve. We have been all over the country serving. And now God said, now is the time to come and serve. I had every desire to serve with every part of my being, to give everything that I had within me, to make sure that what God had given me was shared. But what I was met with in certain instances and circumstances was the exact opposite of my expectation. And I was blown, I was hit, I was hurt. And I got back up with the knowledge that, Lord, you called me here. Okay, I'm hurt. I'm getting back up. I'm getting back in the ring. And he hit again. And I got hit again and again and again until I felt myself falling, staggering, falling. And this happened for months and months of just falling. But I did not realize what was happening in my own heart until one day my father, he said to me, just as clear as day, never really talked much, but when he said this, my earthly father, when he said this, it blew me out of the water. He said, don't speak of this again. Don't speak of this matter again. Don't even let it come out of your mouth again. And I wanted to put my foot down and say, I'm not the one in the wrong, and blah, 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 blah. But when he said it, I closed my mouth. And I started to think about what he said. He said, don't speak of this again. Because what he saw in me was something growing in my heart that wasn't me. Something was showing up in my countenance and in my behavior and in my posture that wasn't me. And it was the opposite of what I had come here to do. He said, don't let it come out of your mouth again. I felt like I was 10 years old. What you doing? Threatening me, telling me don't. But I listened. Because one thing about my parents is they raised us by first looking at yourself. Look at yourself first. Stop blaming everybody else. They were not the kind of parents that say, what you doing talking to my child? Don't you correct my child? They were not those kinds of parents. They will always come to us and say, what you do? What did you do? And I grew up that way. So when he spoke that way, I instantly started to look within. And what I found was bitterness. Bitterness had started to settle in my heart. And that was keeping me speaking. That was keeping me talking. That was keeping me wondering and wishing and hoping and waiting. That bitterness had taken root in my heart. And it took months for God to work it out of me. Working it out, working it out, working it out, working it out. And I'm like back and forth with God. I'm like, Lord, no, this is not me. He said, yes, when you allow it to get to your heart, you put that in in your life until you let His grace back in. When you let His grace back in and you start thinking the way He wants you to think, talking the way He wants you to talk, you'll start seeing your situation change. So by the time I entered into the situation again, and that bitterness was all prevalent, and it was filling my glass and my heart, God said, now let me add a little bit of me into this situation. You know, sometimes people hand us a lemon. God is the one to make it lemonade. He is the one to say, I'll make your bitterness into a sweet smelling savor, to where it's not only enjoyable, it's rewarding and it's refreshing. And when you go to drink it, you see it's no longer bitter, but it's sweet. Because for some reason, you're not looking at your enemy anymore. You're looking at what God can do. And I found that situation change. Because I found myself changed. I found the key that David found at the very beginning. That when God puts a call on your life, nobody can take that call away. You're going to have enemies to threaten that call. But if you stand with God and you put away all evil speaking, all malice, all wrath, all anger, then God can bring into fruition everything He intended to be for that time. That's our experience. And we have a beautiful story in the Bible to paint the picture of how we are to let God's grace come in. Because that very grace that will come in is the very grace that will save us in the end. That's all I have to say.
As we close and prepare to conclude, I want to read a few verses. Because as the message was going on, some of us, in our bitterness, we actually are bitter towards God. We're upset about something that the Lord may have let happen, or something that the Lord may have let be. We want to share with you some words of encouragement from the book of Hebrews. When God does something that you don't understand, or when there's a loss in your life that you can't comprehend, and you feel a sense of robbery, or when you feel that sense of loss, look at what the word says. He says, now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. So the Lord says, I feel you. I know what I'm doing right now, and what I've taken from you, it doesn't feel good. What I'm letting happen to you, it doesn't feel good. But, look at verse 12. Lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let it rather be healed. God is not saying don't hurt, but He's saying hurt, but let me heal it. We're humans. We're going to hurt. People are going to hurt you. People are going to hurt your feelings. No one is in this church long enough who has not been here long enough for someone to hurt their feelings. You are not here in this church because no one has hurt your feelings. You're here in this church because you let someone heal your hurt. Now, you can put up with the mess in a church and let God heal that hurt. Why can't He heal that hurt in your house? Why can't He heal that hurt with your parents? Why can't He heal that hurt with your children? The Bible says He'll make straight paths. The Bible says He'll make the lame walk. The Bible with all men. And holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Are you following that? That means the people in heaven are not just people who have been forgiven. Watch it. The people in heaven who have been forgiven and who then forgive others. You ain't going to heaven with bitterness in your heart. We'll tell a homosexual in a minute, you ain't coming up in heaven acting like that. And that's true. We'll tell an adulterer, you ain't going to the kingdom without repentance. We'll tell a thief, you ain't going to heaven without saying you're sorry. Well, guess what? Forgiven to the forgiven. We ain't going to heaven until we become forgiven. Now here's what's twisted. The only way you become a forgiver is that people gotta hurt you. People have to do stuff to you that you don't deserve. People gotta say stuff to you that ain't right. But that's the only way you'll be able to be a forgiver. So you mean to tell me we ain't gonna make it to the kingdom without these crazy people in life? That's exactly what the Bible is saying. That's why Jesus said, let the wheat and the tares grow together. Because you ain't going to the kingdom without the crazy people. So let's take that prayer out of our prayer. Lord, take him out. That ain't the prayer. That's wasted energy. Because if you take that person out of it, then you can't forgive. So now let's do what David did and turn the focus back on ourselves. And the Bible says, look diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. What that means is, when people plant seeds of bitterness in your life, and when they hurt you, be quick to run to grace. Don't fail the grace. What are we saying? That means that you know how you go to God after you've done wrong? You get down on your knees and say, Lord, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. You run to that same altar. And when that person has hurt your feelings, and they've said it again, or they've done it again, you run. You get down on your knees, and you say, Jesus, I need you to forgive them through me. That's the appeal. That's it. That is what your homework is. We need to forgive as we've been forgiven. Because as we follow this path, church, we're going to go through hurt. We're going to go through persecution. But the operative word is through. I want to go through. If you want to go through, we want to invite you to bow your heads. If you know that you need to go through, but you can't go through on your own, I need you to bow your head. And we're going to ask now for a grace that is greater, not just than our sin, but a grace that is greater than the sin against us. Father, we come together to pray, and we just want to thank you so much for a life lesson. The life lesson of David, and we even thank you for the life lesson of Saul. Together they show us the power of bitterness and the power of forgiveness. And we try to lay out a picture that is crystal clear so that you can show us, Father, what we can do by your Spirit. And so my prayer, before Tara prays her prayer, is this. And that is that, Lord, we ourselves would accept your forgiveness. That we ourselves receive your grace. And that as freely as you pour it upon us, may we pour it upon one another.
And Lord, as we all stand for our benediction, we want to end this service, we want to end this time with giving you permission, Lord, to speak to us. Speak to us about what's in our own hearts. We can't judge each other. We don't know what's in the heart of our sister or our brother. We don't know, Lord. But you can reveal to each and every one of us what we are to do to be within your grace. Lord, save us. We know you can. Nothing is impossible with you. Nothing, no situation is beyond you. So Lord, we know and we leave with hope and assurance in what you are able to do and what you will do on our behalf. Lord, we pray. We pray for strength, for wisdom, for guidance. We pray for joy. And we love you, Lord. Thank you for loving us eternally, unconditionally. And thank you for being our example. This is our prayer, Lord, and we pray in Jesus' name. May we all say, amen.
If you were blessed by this video, praise Jesus. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. There is much more to see and learn on our website at CHANGEministry.org.